Hello everyone, welcome back to another exercise tutorials playlist, and this time we are working on financial management exercises, BUS 223. In this particular playlist we are going to focus on chapter 3 exercises, starting with problem number 3. So let's read the question together and see how we can solve this one. The question says, construct a balance sheet for Sophie's sofas given the following data. What is shareholders' equity? And then they're giving us a few accounts and their balances, starting with the cash balances of 10,000, inventory of sofas 200,000, and then store and property 100,000, accounts receivable 22,000, accounts payable 17,000, and finally long-term debt of 170,000. And all we need to do here is just construct a balance sheet. We are not really given a lot of information here, so typically when you do a balance sheet you stick to the international standards of reporting format, but in this case we don't have the date, we don't have a lot of information, we only have the company's name. So we'll start with the company's name, and just keep in mind that when we are constructing a balance sheet, the balance sheet depends on the accounting equation, and you probably already know this, but just to remind you, the accounting equation says assets equals liabilities plus owner's equity. And in this scenario, we are given some assets accounts and some liabilities accounts, but we are not really given the owner's equity. In fact, the question is requiring us to figure out the shareholders' equity. Okay, so we will start with the company name at the top. So Sophie Sofas. We'll just put a line here at the bottom. Okay, and we'll start with the assets accounts. Which of these are assets? Let's highlight them. We have cash balances. This is an asset account. Sorry, let me make this a bit smaller. Okay. And we have inventory of sofas, so this is also an assets account. And here another asset, store and property, and also accounts receivable. So we have these 4 accounts as assets, whereas the remaining 2, accounts payable and long-term debt, these are liabilities. So let's highlight them in a different color. Let's use red. These are the liabilities accounts. Knowing these accounts and knowing our formula right here, since we have the assets accounts of the company and the liabilities accounts of the company, we can figure out the shareholders' equity, right? So let's list the assets accounts, starting with the cash, okay, with a balance of $10,000. And then we will list accounts receivable. Remember, for the assets accounts, you want to start with the most liquid assets going down to the least liquid assets, right? So cash is the most liquid, and then accounts receivable. With a balance of 22,000. And then inventory with a balance of 200,000, and finally store and property with a balance of $100,000. Okay. Now, after we have listed all of the assets accounts given to us in the question, we can figure out the total assets, right? So the total assets are going to be the total of these four balances. So 10,000, I'm going to use my calculator here, plus 22,000, plus 200,000, plus 100,000. And that is $332,000. $332,000. We'll close this balance down. And then we will move on to the other section, which is the liabilities and shareholders' equity. Starting with the most liquid, of course, which is the liabilities accounts. And we have two liabilities accounts. So the most liquid out of these two, we have accounts receivable and long-term debt. This is going to be the most liquid, so we'll start with that. So accounts payable first. With a balance of 17,000. And then long-term debt. With a balance of 170,000. Okay. And that would give us a total liability, or a total liabilities of 187,000. No need for a calculator here. Okay. And then shareholder equity, which is unknown to us. It was not really given in the question, but since we now know that the total assets is 332,000 for this company, and the total liabilities are 187,000, we can refer back to our formula right here and figure out the shareholder equity. So playing around with this formula, we can move the liabilities to the left side of the equation. It will become assets minus liabilities equals owner's equity or shareholder's equity, same thing. And the total assets are 332,000 minus the total liabilities of 187,000. That will give us the total shareholders' equity. Let's use the calculator. 332 minus 187,000. That's 145,000. Okay? So knowing this, we can go back here and record or report our shareholders' equity, which is $145,000. Okay. And then remember, for a balance sheet, these two need to equal each other, the assets and the total shareholders' equity and liabilities, which we're going to write down here. Total liabilities and shareholders' equity. I'm just going to write it as an abbreviation. I don't have enough space. Adding those two together, the 187,000, 145,000, that will give me my balance of $332,000, which represents the total liabilities and shareholders' equity for Sophia's sofas, or Sophie's sofas in this exercise. Okay. This is the complete answer. So the total assets 332,000, The total liability is 187, and the shareholders' equity 145,000, which was required in the question. And of course, the total liabilities and shareholders' equity are going to match the total assets of 332,000. If you want to go the extra mile, maybe you can add a comment at the bottom and say, answer the specific question that was asked in the exercise, which was, what is the shareholders' equity? You can go back here at the bottom and say, the shareholders' equity is $145,000. Not really necessary. This is redundant because you already found that value in your balance sheet, but just to clarify your answers and show that you have a full understanding of your answers. Okay? This is how you do problem number 3. I hope that you found this video useful. Until I see you in the next exercise, have a good one.